The marble floors of Riverside Galleria gleamed under the crystal chandeliers as I followed my mother and sister through the main concourse. Black Friday crowds swirled around us, shopping bags from designer stores rustling with each step. My mother's voice carried over the ambient music and chattering shoppers. "I don't know why you insisted on meeting here, Elena," Mom said, adjusting her Burberry scarf. "You know this mall is completely out of your price range." My sister Christine linked her arm through Mom's, her new Cartier bracelet catching the light. "She probably wanted to window shop. See how the other half lives." I smiled softly, running my hand along the brass railing I'd personally selected from an architectural salvage company in Boston 3 years ago. The entire restoration of this 1920s building had taken 18 months and cost $42 million. Every detail, from the restored Art Deco moldings to the imported Italian marble, had required my approval. "I thought it would be nice to spend time together," I said simply. "It's been a while since we all went shopping." Christine laughed, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Shopping? Elena, the cheapest store in here is probably that soap boutique, and even their hand wash is $40. Your entire beauty budget couldn't cover one bottle." We passed the fountain in the center courtyard, where water cascaded over bronze sculptures I'd commissioned from an artist in Prague. Children threw pennies while their parents relaxed on the limestone benches surrounding the pool. "There's a Target about 3 miles from here," Mom suggested helpfully. "Much more appropriate for your budget. They're having sales today too." "I'm fine shopping here," I said. Christine stopped in front of Valentino, her eyes lighting up. "Oh, this is where I bought my dress for the charity gala last month. Marcus and I are seated at the head table this year. The tickets were $5,000 each." "Your husband is doing so well," Mom gushed. "Senior partner at the firm at only 38. And that house you bought in Riverview Estates. Simply stunning." "Thank you, Mom." Christine studied her reflection in the store window. "We've worked hard to build our lifestyle. The right schools, the right connections, the right neighborhood. It matters." I nodded, remembering the lease negotiation with Valentino's corporate team. They'd wanted prominent window placement and had agreed to a 15-year lease at premium rates. The store alone generated $80,000 in monthly rent. "Elena, what are you standing around for?" Christine turned to me with exaggerated concern. "There's a Marshall's in the strip mall on 5th Street. That's more your speed, isn't it? Last season's clothes at discount prices." "I'm just enjoying the atmosphere," I said. Mom checked her watch, a vintage Rolex that Christine had given her last Christmas. "Well, Christine and I have appointments at Neiman Marcus. They're holding several pieces for us in the VIP suite. Elena, why don't you?" She gestured vaguely toward the lower level. "There's a food court downstairs. Maybe get yourself a pretzel?" "Actually," Christine added, pulling out her wallet, "here's $20. Get yourself something nice for lunch. Consider it an early Christmas present." I looked at the bill she was offering, crisp and new, extended with the kind of pitying expression people reserve for the less fortunate. "That's generous, but I'm fine." "Don't be proud," Mom insisted. "We know things are tight for you. What do you make at that little nonprofit? 30,000? 35? It's admirable work helping poor people plan their finances, but it doesn't pay well." "I manage," I said quietly. Christine tucked the 20 into my jacket pocket anyway. "Use it. And Elena, maybe don't follow us around today. The stores we're going to, the staff can be judgmental about people who clearly can't afford anything. I'd hate for you to be embarrassed." They walked toward Neiman Marcus, their designer handbags swinging in sync, leaving me standing beside the fountain. I pulled out my phone and checked the text from James, my mall director. "Owner's quarterly walkthrough at 2 p.m. Security flagged some maintenance issues in the north wing." I replied, "Perfect. I'm here now anyway." My phone buzzed again immediately. James's number appeared on the screen. "Miss Chin, I just saw you on the security cameras. Are those 2 women bothering you? I can have security escort them out if needed." I smiled at the camera discreetly mounted in the decorative crown molding above me. "No, James. That's my mother and sister. They don't know about the mall." Silence on the other end then. "I'm sorry, what?" "They don't know I own Riverside Galleria. Or the 4 other commercial properties in my portfolio. It's a long story." Should I not acknowledge you during your walkthrough?" Let's play it by ear. I'll text you when I'm ready. I wandered through the mall, observing operations with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent 3 years transforming a dying shopping center into the most profitable luxury destination in the state. The occupancy rate was 98%, with a waiting list of retailers desperate for space. Average sales per square foot exceeded $2,000, putting Riverside in the top 5% of malls nationally. Near the Gucci store, I overheard two sales associates discussing their commission projections for the day. Good. High staff morale was crucial. I made a mental note to approve James's proposal for improved break room facilities. At the Tiffany & Company location, I paused to admire their holiday window display. A winter wonderland featuring actual ice sculptures changed daily. The lease agreement for that store had been particularly complex, but their presence elevated the entire property's reputation. My phone buzzed. Christine had posted to Instagram a photo of herself and Mom in the Neiman Marcus VIP suite, surrounded by shopping bags. The caption read, "Black Friday done right. #luxury life, #blessed and grateful, #know your worth." I was about to put my phone away when I noticed I'd been tagged in the comments. Christine had written, "Adelena C. couldn't join us. Shopping at her budget-level face blowing a kiss, love my sister anyway. #family first." 3 of her friends had already commented with crying laughing emojis. I took a screenshot and continued walking, passing the Louis Vuitton, Hermès and Burberry stores that formed the luxury corridor. Each lease represented millions in annual revenue. Each brand had specifically chosen Riverside because of its reputation for quality and its affluent customer base. Near the Prada store, I spotted my mother and Christine emerging from Neiman Marcus, laden with shopping bags. I stepped into a seating area partially hidden by a large potted palm, watching as they paused in the center of the concourse. "This has been such a successful day," Mom announced loudly, clearly aware of the nearby shoppers. 3 new dresses, 2 pairs of shoes and that lovely coat. "How much did we spend, Christine?" "About 18,000, Christine replied with satisfaction. "But we deserve it. Success should be celebrated." "Absolutely. Unlike some people, we understand the value of quality." Mom's voice carried deliberately. "Shopping at discount stores wearing last season's styles. It's so depressing." An elderly couple nearby glanced at them with disapproval, but Mom seemed oblivious. Christine checked her phone. "I wonder where Elena went. Probably couldn't handle watching us shop. The poor dear must feel so inadequate." "I worry about her," Mom said, her tone dripping with false concern. "She's 32 and has nothing to show for it. No husband, no real career, no property. Just that tiny apartment in the old part of town and her little nonprofit job." I remained hidden, documenting this conversation in my memory. "She could have done so much more," Christine continued. "Remember when she got into Yale? She turned it down for that state school because of the scholarship. That's when I knew she'd never amount to anything. Winners pay for Yale." "Such a disappointment," Mom agreed. "When people ask about my daughters, I talk about you, the successful one. Elena, I just say she's finding herself, or doing charitable work. It's embarrassing, honestly." They moved toward the exit and I waited until they'd left before texting James. "Ready for the walkthrough. Meet me at the North Wing entrance in 5 minutes." James appeared precisely on time, dressed in his usual impeccable suit, carrying a tablet and looking every inch the professional director of a premier shopping destination. He'd worked with me since the beginning of the renovation, and I trusted his judgment completely. "Miss Chin," he greeted me formally, then lowered his voice. "I have to ask, how do you deal with that?" "Practice," I said simply. "Show me the maintenance issues." We spent the next hour touring the property. A skylight seal needed replacing in the north wing. The HVAC system in the east corridor was running at suboptimal efficiency. 3 stores had submitted requests for minor lease modifications. All routine issues, but I insisted on reviewing everything personally. "The Valentino lease comes up for renewal in 6 months, James noted. "They want to expand into the adjacent space." "What's the projected revenue increase?" "Approximately 40% based on their sales data. They're willing to go to premium rates for the additional square footage." "Approve it, but I want final sign-off on the renovation plans. The Art Deco aesthetic must be maintained." We were discussing the proposed expansion when I noticed my mother and Christine re-entering the mall. They'd apparently forgotten something and were heading back toward Neiman Marcus. "James," I said quietly, "I think it's time for that teaching moment I mentioned." He followed my gaze and understanding dawned. "Should I approach them? Let's make it natural. We'll be discussing the lease renewals right here when they pass by." We positioned ourselves near the Hermes store, James holding his tablet prominently. I stood with the relaxed confidence of someone reviewing her property, which was exactly what I was doing. Christine spotted me first. Her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with judgment. "Elena? What are you still doing here? I thought you'd have left hours ago." "Just taking care of some business," I said mildly. Mom joined her, looking me up and down with disapproval. "Business? Honey, you can't afford anything here. Stop torturing yourself and go home." James cleared his throat. "Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but—" "We're having a private family conversation," Christine interrupted sharply. "Whatever you're selling, we're not interested." "I'm not selling anything," James said with practiced patience. "I'm James Morrison, director of Riverside Galleria. I was just discussing property management with—" "Property management?" Christine laughed. "Elena works at a nonprofit helping poor people balance their checkbooks. She doesn't know anything about property management." I remained silent, watching James's expression carefully. "I see," James said slowly. "Well, perhaps there's been some confusion. Miss Chin, would you like me to explain or—" "What's there to explain?" Mom demanded. "And why are you calling her Ms. Chin? Her last name is Miller, just like mine and Christine's." "Actually," I said softly, "I changed it back to Dad's surname 5 years ago. You didn't notice because we don't see each other often." Christine waved this away dismissively. "Whatever name you use, you still can't afford to shop here. Elena, seriously, you're embarrassing yourself. This man probably thinks you're loitering." "Loitering?" James repeated, his voice carefully neutral. "Miss Chin, should I clarify the situation?" I thought about it, watching my mother and sister's faces, so certain of their superiority, so comfortable in their condescension. "Go ahead." James turned to face them fully, his professional demeanor firmly in place. "I'm confused about something. You're saying that Ms. Chin works at a non-profit and can't afford to shop here." "Obviously," Christine said with exaggerated patience. "Look at her. She's wearing Target clothes and carrying a purse from TJ Maxx." "Actually, this purse is from Brunello Cucinelli," I corrected quietly. "It cost $3,000. I just prefer subtle designs." Christine's laugh was ugly. "You expect us to believe you spent $3,000 on that plain bag? Elena, lying about money is just sad." "I'm not lying. And I didn't spend money on it. The designer sent it as a thank you gift when I approved their store lease." The words hung in the air for a moment. Mom's expression shifted from condescension to confusion. "What are you talking about?" James pulled up his tablet, turning it so they could see the screen. "Ms. Elena Chin is the owner of Riverside Galleria. She purchased the property 3 years ago for $42 million, invested an additional $28 million in renovations, and has increased the property value to approximately $190 million. Silence. Christine stared at the tablet, where my name appeared at the top of the ownership documents. That's not possible." "I assure you it's quite possible," James continued. "Ms. Chin owns this mall outright, along with 4 other commercial properties in the region. Her total portfolio value exceeds $300 million. Mom groped for the nearest bench, sitting down heavily. $300 million? This can't be real," Christine insisted. "Elena works at a nonprofit. She lives in a tiny apartment. She drives a Honda. I work part-time at the nonprofit because I believe in their mission," I explained calmly. "I live in a brownstone I renovated in the historic district. It's 4,000 square feet and worth about $3 million. And I drive a Honda because it's reliable and I don't need to impress anyone." "But—" Mom's voice was faint. "You turned down Yale because you couldn't afford it." "I turned down Yale because the state school offered me a full scholarship plus a stipend, and I wanted to graduate debt-free so I could start investing immediately. By the time I was 25, I'd purchased my first commercial property. A small office building I renovated and flipped. I used those profits to buy a strip mall, then another. Riverside was my fifth acquisition. James added helpfully. Miss Chin is rather well known in commercial real estate circles. She gave the keynote address at the National Property Developers Conference last year. Christine's face had gone pale. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? I asked. At Christmas 3 years ago when you spent the entire dinner explaining why my life was a failure? Or at your wedding when you seated me at the kids' table because you didn't want your successful friends to know about your disappointing sister? Mom found her voice. That's not fair, Elena. We didn't know. Exactly, I interrupted, my tone still calm but firm. You didn't know and you didn't care to know. You saw my job title and my car and made assumptions about my worth as a person. But you let us believe, Christine started. I let you believe what you chose to believe, I corrected. I never lied about my circumstances. I simply didn't perform my success in ways you recognized as valuable. James's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at me. Miss Chin, the Versace corporate team is here early for their meeting. They're waiting in the executive conference room. Thank you, James. I'll be there in a moment. Wait, Mom said desperately. You're meeting with Versace? Their lease is up for renewal. They want to expand their current space by 40%. I checked my watch. I really do need to go. This meeting has been illuminating. Christine grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Elena, wait. I don't understand. If you're this successful, why do you dress so plainly? Why do you work at a nonprofit? Why don't you live like you have money? I gently removed her hand from my arm. Because my self-worth isn't tied to external validation. Because helping people achieve financial stability matters to me. And because I learned a long time ago that people who judge you based on your appearance aren't people whose opinions should matter. But we're your family, Mom protested. Are you? I asked quietly. Family supports each other. Family doesn't mock each other on social media. Family doesn't hand their sister $20 like she's a charity case. Christine's face flushed. I was trying to be nice. You were trying to be superior, I corrected. There's a difference. James cleared his throat diplomatically. Miss Chin, I hate to interrupt, but the Versace team. Of course. I turned back to my mother and sister one final time. You're welcome to continue shopping here. All customers are valued at Riverside Galleria, regardless of how much money they have or what they're wearing. That's the culture I've built. Elena, please, Mom said, tears forming. Can we talk about this? We just did talk about it. What you mean is, can you explain away 3 decades of treating me like I was less than because I didn't match your definition of success? I smiled sadly. I need to go to my meeting. James will validate your parking on the way out. I walked away, hearing Christine's voice behind me. This is insane. She can't just, we're her family. James caught up to me near the executive elevator. That was remarkably restrained, if you don't mind my saying so. Thank you for handling it professionally. It was my pleasure. Although I have to admit, watching their faces when I showed them the ownership documents was deeply satisfying. He paused. What happens now? Now I meet with Versace about their expansion, review the quarterly earnings reports, and approve next month's marketing budget. Same as always. I meant with your family. I pressed the button for the executive floor. That depends entirely on them. The Versace meeting went smoothly. They agreed to my terms for the expansion, including maintaining the building's historic architectural elements. After they left, I spent 2 hours reviewing financial reports with my CFO, who videoconferenced from our main office downtown. Riverside exceeded projections again this quarter, she reported. Net operating income is up 15% year-over-year. The luxury retailers are particularly strong performers. Good. Use the excess revenue to fund the scholarship program at the nonprofit. I want to double the number of recipients next year. Already drafted. I'll send the proposal tomorrow. After the call, I sat in my office, a restored space that had once been the mall's original administrative suite from 1928, and looked out over the concourse below. Shoppers moved through the space, unaware that every detail around them represented years of careful planning and substantial investment. My phone buzzed. Christine's name appeared. Elena, please call me. We need to talk. What I said earlier. I didn't mean it. Any of it. I deleted the message without responding. Another text came through, this time from Mom. Your sister is devastated. She didn't realize. We didn't realize. Please give us a chance to apologize properly. I set the phone aside and returned to work. Over the next week, the messages continued. Christine called 6 times. Mom left voicemails that progressed from apologetic to defensive to angry to apologetic again. I responded to none of them. On Thanksgiving, the actual holiday, my phone rang at 8 a.m. Christine's number again. Elena, I know you're ignoring me, but please listen. I looked you up. The keynote speech James mentioned, your investments, the awards you've won from the business community. You're not just successful, you're exceptional. And I've been terrible to you. I almost answered but didn't. She continued in the voicemail. I thought about what you said about judging people by their appearance. You're right. I've spent years building a life that looks impressive on the outside while going into debt to maintain it. Marcus and I are house poor. We leased the luxury cars. The charity gala tickets? We couldn't actually afford them, but we went anyway because of how it looked. Meanwhile, you've been genuinely successful this entire time and I mocked you for it. I saved the voicemail but didn't respond. At 3 p.m. there was a knock on my brownstone door. I checked the security camera and saw Christine standing on my porch alone holding a pie. I opened the door. I brought sweet potato pie, she said immediately. I made it myself, which you know means it's probably terrible because I can't cook. But I wanted to bring something that required actual effort instead of just buying something expensive. I stepped aside, letting her in. Christine stood in my foyer, looking around at the restored Victorian details, the original hardwood floors I'd refinished, the antique chandelier I'd found at an estate sale. Your home is beautiful. It's actually you, elegant but understated. Thank you. I'm sorry, she said abruptly. Not sorry you were offended. Sorry. I treated you horribly because it made me feel better about my own insecurities. You didn't perform success the way I expected, so I assumed you were failing. That says everything about me and nothing about you. I gestured to the living room. We sat on opposite ends of my restored Victorian sofa. I've been thinking about what you said, Christine continued. About family supporting each other. I haven't been your sister in any meaningful way since we were kids. I've been your competitor, your judge, your critic. Never your supporter. No, I agreed. You haven't. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell us? About your success. I considered the question carefully. At first I didn't tell you because I was young and still building. By the time I'd achieved real success, you and Mom had already established such a clear pattern of judgment that telling you felt pointless. What would it have changed? We would have treated you better, Christine said quietly. Exactly. You would have treated me better because of my money, not because I deserved basic respect as a human being. That's not actually better treatment. It's just a different kind of superficiality. Christine absorbed this, tears forming. I've built my entire life around appearing successful instead of actually being successful. And I've been miserable doing it. Then change. How? I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. Marcus and I fight about money constantly. We're about to declare bankruptcy, but we're still pretending everything's fine because we can't face the embarrassment. I pulled out my phone and made a note. Come to the nonprofit Monday morning. 9 a.m. We'll go over your finances and create a realistic plan. No judgment, just practical help. You do that? After everything. The nonprofit helps people in financial crisis regardless of their background. That includes family members who've been terrible to me. I paused. But Christine, I'm helping you as a financial counselor, not as your sister. You'll need to earn the sister relationship back. That takes time. I understand. She wiped her eyes. What about Mom? What about her? She wants to apologize too. She's afraid you'll never speak to her again. I'll speak to her again. When she's ready to actually examine why she treated me the way she did, instead of just apologizing because she found out I'm wealthy. Christine nodded slowly. That's fair. We sat in silence for a moment, then Christine laughed wetly. You know what's funny? I posted about my Neiman Marcus shopping trip on Instagram. Spent $18,000 I didn't have on clothes I don't need to impress people I don't like. Meanwhile, you actually own the mall I was shopping in. It is somewhat ironic. Can I ask one more thing? The $20 I tried to give you. I donated it to the nonprofit's holiday fund. Someone will have a better Thanksgiving because of it. Christine's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Elena. For everything. I know. Now let's see if that pie is as terrible as you think. It was, in fact, pretty terrible. But we ate it anyway. Over the next months, things slowly changed. Christine came to the nonprofit every week, working with one of my counselors to address her debt. She and Marcus sold the house they couldn't afford and moved into a modest condo. She stopped posting about luxury purchases on social media and started posting about her journey toward financial health. Mom took longer. She sent gifts I returned. She wrote letters I filed away unread. Finally, 6 months after the mall incident, she showed up at the nonprofit's office. I'd like to volunteer, she announced. If you'll have me. I looked up from the budget I was reviewing. Why? Because I've spent 6 months thinking about what you said. About judging people by their appearance and their job titles. I've done that my whole life, and it made me a terrible mother to you. She sat down across from my desk without being invited. I don't know how to fix what I broke, Elena. But I want to try. Volunteering here won't fix our relationship. I know. But maybe it'll help me understand why you chose this work over flaunting your wealth. And maybe eventually you'll believe that I'm sorry for the right reasons. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse instead of performative apology. We need help with tax preparation assistance. Training starts next Tuesday. I'll be here. She was. Every Tuesday for the next year, Mom volunteered at the nonprofit helping people navigate their tax returns. She learned their stories, heard about their struggles, and slowly began to understand that financial hardship didn't equal moral failing. One evening she stopped by my office after her shift. I met a woman today. Single mother, 2 jobs, barely making rent. She reminded me of what you must have felt like when we judged you, except her situation is actually desperate and yours never was. We just convinced ourselves it was because you didn't display wealth the way we expected. Did you help her with her taxes? Yes. And I talked to Christine and we're going to fund her security deposit for a better apartment. Anonymously. Mom paused. Is this what it feels like? Using money to actually help instead of just impress? Yes, I said simply. This is what it feels like. The following Thanksgiving we gathered at my brownstone. Christine and Marcus, Mom, and a few friends from the nonprofit. No designer clothes, no expensive gifts, no performances of wealth. Just a meal cooked together and genuine conversation. I'm grateful for second chances, Christine said during our traditional sharing. And for a sister who gave me one even when I didn't deserve it. I'm grateful for lessons learned, Mom added. Even the painful ones. When it was my turn, I looked around the table at the imperfect, evolving family we were building. I'm grateful for people who are willing to change. And for understanding that real success isn't about what you own, it's about who you become. Later, after everyone left, I drove to Riverside Galleria. It was closed for the holiday, empty and quiet. I walked through the darkened corridors, past the stores I'd carefully curated, through the spaces I'd lovingly restored. My phone buzzed with a photo from Christine. The 3 of us from earlier that evening laughing in my kitchen, no filters or careful staging. Her caption simply read, "Real family." Finally. I saved the photo and continued walking, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The assumptions people made, the judgments they passed, the hierarchies they constructed based on appearances. And I thought about the quiet power of building something meaningful instead of just building something impressive. Of choosing substance over style. Of understanding that the people who judge you by your bank balance aren't people whose opinions should matter. The mall stood around me in the darkness. My achievement, my creation, my proof that success could be built on authenticity rather than performance. But it was the brownstone I'd returned to that night that felt like real success. The relationships slowly healing. The family learning to see beyond surfaces. The understanding that wealth meant nothing without integrity. I locked up the mall and drove home, ready to start building the next chapter. One where the people I loved finally understood that the greatest luxury wasn't what you could buy. It was who you chose to be when no one was watching. And that, I'd finally taught them, was the only kind of wealth that actually mattered.